Welcome back to the Marching Arts Network podcast. I am the Stress Master.
And I am the Tumor, also known as Kanan.
And I am Jen.
I say that's your cue.
You're just Jen. You're just Jen.
I'm just Jen today. In fact, I got to change my name. Otherwise, I'm just kind of slowly doxing myself.
All right. Well, this is our special 200th episode edition.
Woo-hoo!
Now it's not the two.
Who would have thought three old knobheads would get this far, eh?
I know. Now this is not the 200th podcast. Go ahead.
No. I would say knobhead, by the way, has been a British swear word of the day.
Yes, it has.
Yes.
It has been, and if you missed that, go back and watch it somewhere. It's on a short, I think, actually. It's on one of our shorts. So this is the 200th video on this channel. So thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Podcast-wise, I don't know how many podcasts. I'd have to go back and look.
It's in the 40s, I think.
I'd have to go back and look and see how many podcasts. But this is the 200th video on this channel, and we just thought it would be kind of cool to have a podcast for that. Because let me turn this off. Because everybody here is extremely important to that goal, and we really appreciate everybody, of course, watching and participating and all that stuff. And in a little FYI, we're almost at 2,400 subscribers, so that's kind of cool. So if you have not subscribed, now would be a great time to help us out. Subscribe, and that way you get notified when we have cool videos like the one you're watching right now, because we're cool and all that stuff. So we're going to start off with a little bit of news. There is some sad news, believe it or not, that has come out in the last week. So I do want to talk about that. And then we're also going to be talking about some other things. And then we're going to be changing it up and actually talking a little bit about ourselves and how we got involved with drum corps, kind of like our experience and where we marched and all that stuff. So you guys have a little bit more knowledge of who we are and where we come from and what our drive is to do this channel, which, is all around, the marching arts. So you guys have anything before we jump into the news?
Nope. Let's do it.
Nope. So we're going to start off with a little bit of bad news. Fred Morris, who was the Troopers Corps director from 2006 to 2018, sadly passed away. He actually was the corps director when they went back into finals for the first time after 23 years. I was reading a little bit about the story. Just seems like a really great guy. He was around the activity for a long time. He's in the Troopers Hall of Fame and the Blue Coats Hall of Fame. So that's pretty impressive on its own. But just our condolences, of course, to everybody there. And, it's sad when anybody from the activity is no longer with us, but especially someone that had such a huge impact on that group, because from 2006 to 2018 they had a lot of growth during that time. They were real. I love a lot of their shows during that time period. I think one of my favorite ones of theirs had to do with I thought it was them, horses. It was like based on horses, and they had these fences. Unless I'm thinking of a different show.
Wild Horses, I think it was called.
Wild Horses, yeah. That was a great show. Love that show. And of course, I love the modern era too. But
they had one around 2014 as I was kind of getting back into drum corps, where it was like they had a tarp on the field. It was like a big path, and it was such a great show. It was one of those shows where like they might have been like 14, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there, where I would have loved to have seen that be a finals show.
I think,
but it was a great show.
I think that was Long Way Home, I think it was called.
Yeah, it might have been 2011, because I kind of went to finals in 11 and again in 14. So it's one of those. And I
remember something else I remember about that show was in the end, the drum major cued the brass line for their big chord at the end. And while they were playing the chord, he turns around, pulls out his sword, salutes the crowd, and then turns around and says, "Right now, louder." They held that cord for like 39 seconds.
Right. Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'm just reading a little bit about Fred as well. I mean, I didn't realize that he was so young. I mean, he was 73, which you think back when we were kids, that seems like it was really old. But now that we're in our 50s, it doesn't seem so old anymore. But I'm just reading a little bit about his background. Obviously, he got involved with the troopers from the finance side of things. A lot of people forget that before Fred, the troopers was a corps that was firmly on their ass financially. And his background. A lot of people forget that these people that run drum corps, a lot of people think that they run full time, and they don't. A lot of these people have day jobs, and Fred's day job was in finance and accounting. Which was just an invaluable resource to the troopers back then. But he was one of these guys. You looked at him, you thought you saw that long hair and that beard and all that stuff. You think he just looks like he's been a trooper all of his life.
I know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I love that hat in that picture. Yeah.
So
here's another
haircut.
Is the Governors. So they've been Sound Sport. They were Sound Sport last year. Now they're actually moving up into the International All-Age class. So we wanted to congratulate them because any more corps are good. We're happy to see that. And their season's kicking off on the 15th. So they're going to be having auditions, stuff like that. One of the things I've been talking to my wife about is I might actually go march a corps somewhere.
Do it.
Are there all-age corps in California?
Nope, there's zero. So I'd have to fly back east.
Do it. Honestly, don't think about it. Just do it. That's what I did. And we're going to talk about our backstory, but that's what I did in 2016. I just took the chance and did it.
Yeah, but you had to get somewhere local. This is not local. None of these are local.
Yeah. Relatively speaking, yeah. But I mean, for me as a Kids Grove scout, I'm really glad to see the Govies back in competition, because in the times when Kids Grove came over to DCA, the Govies and Kids Grove were quite close to each other. So, they were kind of our homies in the state, so to speak. So, I'm really glad to see them back in competition where they belong.
Yeah, we'll see if I actually do it, but because it's going to cost thousands of dollars, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford that because I have to fly back there.
Who would you march?
That stuff. I don't know, man. I don't know. Would you go ring chasing with say the Buccaneers, or? It's possible. I mean, I actually considered that, but I was maybe the Caballeros, or I don't know. But it's I don't know. There's some that are closer, I think, too. There's some all age.
There's some like closer. In Ohio and yeah.
Yeah, so I might do something like that. I don't know. We'll see. But it was just a thought,
Minnesota brass. I mean, something to consider as well. Where is it relatively cheap to fly to?
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. All right. So here's some. Oh, what happened in this story? Okay,
there's a green screen. There we go.
Yeah, there was a green screen. Okay, so something else historic.
Yay.
These guys are going to be phasing out their.
I feel phased out.
Library. Yeah, which makes sense. Nobody's watching it, and no one's buying it anymore. They just need to have it for download, which is it's the 21st century, or so let's get with the times. And honestly, DVD's quality suck, and Blu-ray is okay, but now you have 4K and all this stuff. It's just let's put stuff in.
Right.
What?
Do they really think somebody's going to pay $21 for a Blu-ray disc? Who even has a Blu-ray player anymore?
I know, right? It's my Xbox. That's about it.
Yeah, my PlayStation.
But even Xbox.
So interesting.
But even Xbox, if you're like me, I got the Xbox. What is it? The newest one, but the S.
The S.
So it doesn't actually have a disc player in it. Everything's digital download.
I buy used games, so I don't do that.
Exactly.
It's interesting because so in my business, I just launched a service that's about digitizing and archiving older media, both print photos, VHS tapes, but also digital media, because how many of us have like CDs and CD-ROMs and DVDs that we burned like crazy that have photos on them, whether we went to the photo store to get, a digital card transferred or something. And this is the whole thing. Like, I haven't had a CD-ROM drive in I don't know how many years. So in order for me to do this work now, I actually have to go buy a CD-ROM drive so that I can read and rip these files. It's crazy.
So for the younger folks watching us, you're looking at three people that back in the day, right? If you wanted to if you wanted to be cool as shiz, as they say in Wicked. By the way, if you haven't seen Wicked, go see it. It is worth every penny to go see that in the theater. Take Uncle Kanan's advice on this one, all right?
I have to see it alone because 2 hours and 40 minutes is too long for my kids.
It's so good. It is so good. But yeah, no, I mean we're all of an age where we used to sit there and dub tapes, off the cassette, or like you'd get your boom box with the you'd put your tape in there and then record off of the radio. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I have one of those little handheld tape players with the speaker on the back. Yeah. And I would record off the radio like that. And I snuck that in my coat or my jacket or whatever I was wearing. I snuck that into 89 finals and recorded all of finals on that little tape deck.
You just saved yourself $21 then, didn't you?
I did.
You know what's so funny? I don't even have pencils, so that's how obsolete pencils are. But I used to, when I was editing for my Winter Guard shows, I had to do it on a cassette, right? So I'd have to get the cassette and line it up where I wanted to, and then I had to take a pencil and wind the little reel back a little bit so I can get the little bit tighter on the edit, and then have to and it took me hours to get a 5-minute Winter Guard show done.
Terrible.
You do realize, Justin? You do realize post edit. You do realize when you're editing this, you're going to have to put in visual pictures for our younger viewers.
I know.
As to what the hell we're talking about.
Yes, I will. I'll definitely put that in.
Moving on.
Okay, so this is just an example, but there are many, many cores right now that are having Black Friday sales and stuff like that. So please support those cores. Crown. This is what caught my eyes. Crown has they're technically ugly sweaters, but I don't think they're very ugly.
Yeah. No, those are pretty ugly. Hey, Jen.
Yeah.
Maybe Phantom Regiment could do the Phantom Regiment Murders Christmas sweater or something like that.
We do have an ugly sweater.
But if you could somehow, how many murders was it? How many people have been killed in Phantom shows?
14,
get all the deaths on there. Well, unless you count Into the Light, where the entire corps got killed.
That's true. We swooshed them off.
Oh boy! Have you guys seen that video with the Phantom Deaths on it?
There is a video of the Phantom Deaths on it. Yeah.
It's probably going to be on here right now as you guys are watching this. I probably put that clip on there already.
But no, those are
Okay.
pretty ugly, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah. So this is our very first show reveal, which doesn't really tell us anything, but this is Academy. It just says
interesting.
all
They
will be
released it-
revealed.
I'd say, yeah, they released early last year as well.
This doesn't
I
really
like
tell
their
me
motif.
much.
No, but I like the
I see-
motif. And
Yep.
when Academy goes a little darker, I like them a little better. So I don't
Yeah.
know. We'll see. I
Interesting. I just thought it was interesting because
Mm-hmm.
they're the very first ones to post this, and I'm all. But this doesn't tell me anything. It just says all will be revealed. So I don't know. I'm trying to look for the imagery in here and see if there's anything that I'm
That's
missing.
what I'm looking at.
Let me move this out of the way a little bit.
Maybe it's just because I'm obsessed with it at the moment, but I am getting a little bit of a Wicked vibe from that.
Yeah, I don't know if they're gonna do Wicked because this isn't green. This is purple.
Somebody has
Yeah.
to, though. Somebody has to do Wicked this
Oh
year.
no, the rights for that would be ridiculous.
Our next story is Arsenal Drum Corps. So they are moving, granted open class candidate status.
Yes, congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I really I like the uniform there. That's kind of cool. I'm assuming this last
So
year. Were they Sound Sport before?
Yeah, so they were Sound Sport
Yeah.
last year. Now they're open class candidate, which essentially means, as I understand it, and Jen, you might know this. You might know the nuts and bolts of this a little bit better than I do. But as I understand it, when moving up a class, essentially they act as if they're in the class for like a year until they're
Yes.
given full open class status.
Right.
Is that kind of
I
how
think
it
I
works?
think that's I don't really know. It sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
I
still
read
very
that
much
so-
learning my open class rules and that sounds right.
All right, our last big story that we're going to talk about before we actually watch or talk a little bit about ourselves and watch some stuff is the 2024 Drum Corps schedule. So I was actually looking. Somebody, you know what? I'm going to have to find the chart. There's a chart that shows all of the different corps and how many shows they're actually doing. Let me see if
I can talk ad nauseum about this. I did some number crunching. So obviously the new tour schedule has come out for the, and then when you piece it together with the announcements that other drum corps have made, you can kind of see what the full picture looks like. On average, there are 18 shows. Drum corps are doing about 18 shows this year, and there's been a lot of talk. And I'm gonna try not to get too negative here, but there's been a lot of talk in the chat groups and the forums and the pages and everything, complaining about, from fan perspective, complaining about the shrinkage of tour. One thing is to be said, tour has broken up into different pathways. So the only time that all the world-class corps, and sorry, open class, I'm not trying to ignore you, but this is kind of the big talking point. The only time before finals that all of the world-class corps will meet each other is in San Antonio. Atlanta has kind of not been designated as a regional. I think Allentown is still its regional, but it's split across 2 nights. So really, it kind of opens up what the possibilities are going into finals as far as like that entrenched conspiracy of seeding prior to finals. So it's like with Phantom, we're going right into Texas, or we're going right into Georgia, and then across to Texas, and then back up into the Midwest. We kind of see the Midwest twice. So it has this reminiscent feeling of kind of the older tours that we used to do, where we did a regional tour, then we did the national tour. And that national tour kind of sometimes took you to places that you had already been, at least for the Midwest and East Coast drum corps. But the one thing that does do is it hopefully kind of takes some of that financial burden of how much it costs to drive a drum corps across the country. It does not make a huge relief for the West Coast corps. They're still kind of having to, go all the way across and then back into the middle because of that Allentown show. But it'll be kind of interesting to see how we grow from there. And I'm looking at that. Sorry, I'm going on and on. I'm looking at that 18 show number. We were still doing on average 30 to 32 shows up until 2019. I looked all the way back across all of the aughts in the last 25 years, and we were averaging 30 to 32 shows. Now, after the pandemic, we broke down an average in the last few years 24. Now we've lost another 6 and we're down to 18. So we've lost 12 shows since the pandemic. I am curious to see if this is a situation where we've reworked the tour. And yes, it cost us some shows. Let's see what happens in 2026. Let's see what happens in 2027. The new DCI director has a track record of growing shrinking markets. And we have been a shrinking market because of the cost of the activity.
Yeah.
So I want to see what happens in the next couple of years. I'm not going to ring the doom bell yet. But I would like to see some more shows, because the truth of the matter is, it's still, the cost of participating in drum corps is still going up. The performance opportunities are shrinking, and that a lot of people are criticizing that. I'm not going to sugarcoat around it. If we're going to keep charging these kids more and more and more to march because it costs so much to get the circus down the road, we need to give them some opportunities to perform more than we're giving them. And that's my opinion. So that's my challenge to DCI is right the ship and add some shows.
My thoughts on it are, I think that 18 is probably the extreme end of where I would say is a healthy tour. Drum corps become better performers by performing. And those performing opportunities are obviously becoming fewer and far between. That being said, I also understand that moving a drum corps down the road is a very expensive endeavor, not just from the cost of fuel, mind you. People forget, the drivers need to be paid, drivers need to be housed, so on and so forth. My initial thoughts on this tour was, I don't know if this is the right decision. It does seem that, like you said, we've gone from 30 odd shows to the mid 20s down to 18. That does seem a bit extreme to me on the surface, but I also understand why, why we are where we are. I think the other thing to take into consideration as well, and we're not going to get into politics on this podcast, but America is going to be under some political turmoil for the next few years, which is going to have an effect on how much everything costs. So my question is some of this ring fencing in the event that everything becomes more expensive in the new political climate in America? I think that there may be an element of that as well. But you did also allude to the way that we used to tour, and that was you would have regional tours and then you'd have a national tour. And I hear a lot of people our age say, well, why can't we just go back to that old model? Well, that old model doesn't work anymore because schools let out later and they go back to school sooner. Back then it was pretty much nationwide. Everybody let out in the beginning of June and went back to school in September. Now you've got schools some schools don't even come out until July.
Arizona goes back mid-July.
Yeah. So the way that we did it back then, whilst it worked for us back then, wouldn't work now. And I think that the balancing act and it's a real challenge to Nate. And I'm going to look directly into the camera and say, Nate Boudreau, we would love to have you on this podcast, and you're more than welcome. We'd love to have a chat with you. But I think that the real challenge to Nate is finding that balance. Now, do I think Nate is the right guy to do that job? I actually do. I think that this is where the strength of somebody who doesn't have that romantic attachment to the past, is probably going to come good for the activity. So 18 seems a bit small. You raise a valid point with well, tour fees. What are tour fees on average? About $5-6 grand, something like that.
We're pushing $6,000 now.
Plus the
Philly
cost of getting
pushing $6,000.
Yeah, so plus the cost of getting to rehearsals, of auditioning, so on and so forth. I was chatting with somebody the other day who said that before he made a drum corps, he was 1,000 pounds. It was a British guy, 1,000 pounds into just getting into a drum corps, because he'd auditioned for the Blue Devils, he'd auditioned for Vanguard, he'd auditioned for Madison Scouts. And before he even was offered a contract, he was 1,000 pounds. So that's about $1,500 down the hole.
Right.
So yeah, there is a lot of costs. There's a lot of time. There's also a lot of other things that are outside of our little bubble of our drum corps world that will have an effect on our world that needs to be taken into consideration as well.
And unfortunately, we're still feeling the major after effect of the pandemic is insurance. Not only that, but I mean, it's not just our insurance, it's the insurance of the schools we're trying to stay at.
Yeah.
And that's why we're now getting to the point, because we are such a risk heavy thing of a spread that they started charging us, because the insurance was like, we need a separate rider to allow this to happen. And so now the schools pay us so that we can cover that, or the schools charge us. And that was not a thing that happened before the pandemic. And now we see, we are such a liability for schools.
Yeah, and we see that in Europe as well. I mean, things cost a certain amount before the pandemic that cost more after the pandemic, and then they just never came down.
Exactly.
I remember before the pandemic, I could walk into a shop, buy a can of my favorite soft drink for about £1. So what's that? About $1.25, $1.50, something like that. It's £2.50 now.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
The food supply chain is a big struggle still.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
But crazy.
But the point is if I'm buying one of these, how many of these? This isn't an advertisement for Pepsi, by the way. If I'm buying one of these, how much? Just using that as a representation. How much has the cost of fuel gone up for a drum corps? How much has the cost of food gone up for a drum corps? So it's
drivers now. This is something my dad talked about a lot, because he drove for the Cavaliers and for Phantom Regiment for a number of years as a volunteer. Is that when we hire drivers now with our buses, they have to, obviously they have safety logs, they have amounts of hours they can and can't drive, they have downtime that they have to adhere to. So I think, and I can't speak to this is not something I'm curious of how many drivers we're taking on tour now, because we still have some days where we probably break that downtime. We being the collective whole. So I'm not sure if we have backup drivers, or I can't speak to that fully, but that's a concern now, is that we're paying drivers versus the old volunteers, which I'm never saying go back to the old volunteers, because this is a safety issue,
So before I moved to the UK, after I got out of the Air Force, before I moved to the UK, I spent a couple of years as a long haul truck driver. And that was back in the days of paper logs. And paper logs are a thing of the past now as well. It's all electronic logs. I can't imagine that. And back in the day, it used to be I'd have my logbook, and then if I got pulled over, I'd have the logbook that I'd show the cops. Okay. You can't get away with that anymore. And I guarantee you that happened in the world of drum corps, back when all three of us marched. You can't get away with that now. You get an over hours logbook violation on e-logbooks, you're done. You probably lost your day job.
My dad was an airline pilot for his career, and so he absolutely understands downtime, arrest time. And I think he remembers the director at Cavaliers saying, "Hey, we need to keep a logbook," and he was like, "No, you don't want to do that."
Justin, we've been yapping a lot. What have you got to say?
You have been yapping. You've been yapping. That's totally fine. Yeah, so I've just been kind of enjoying the conversation. I did pull up the I couldn't find that exact graphic. That's I think it's on Drum Corps Coffee Shop. Somebody put it up there where they actually broke down like everybody's tour schedules and how many shows. But this I was able to search and just find. So on average, the average is around 18. Some are a little bit lower, 15. The highest I think is 21, and I think it's Mandarins and Blue Devils are like Pacific, 19 or something.
Pacific Crest, I think that's 21.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, what I was thinking about is when we marched. I remember one year we had 42 shows.
Holy crap! That's 42. Extensive. I never did more than like 34.
Yeah, we had 42 because we had a lot in the Pacific Northwest, right? So we used to have. We'd have all the California shows, and we'd have like three up here, and like some down south, and then Arizona, and then we would have Oregon, and then a couple in Washington, because I remember eating strawberries in Washington. I don't know why I remember that.
Right.
Yep.
And
We went up to Washington with 92 for sure.
Yep.
We won a show up in Washington in '92, by the way.
Well, because like we were the only ones there. So,
I wasn't telling him that.
Well, but I mean, here's an example. Spartans
think
like maybe 1, 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think back to that, Justin. I mean, you think just in California alone, we had a show in Sacramento, Concord, Santa Clara, Stockton. Usually had
just
one
in that area. Yeah.
Usually had one in Fresno, and sometimes we had one in Modesto as well, I believe. And then we would either go down to LA where we'd have Riverside, Costa Mesa, San Diego. Yep. We'd have another half dozen shows down there, and then so by the time we came back to Sacramento for our second half of 10 to 10s, we already had 15 shows under our belt.
And look at the starts. All these are in July.
Yeah, we were starting at the beginning of June.
Beginning of June, like June 9, June 10, sometimes June 6. So, I mean, it was just, and I totally get it. I mean, I totally understand why. It is a cost thing, right? Because drum corps are expensive now. I mean, it's like they have trainers, they have personal trainers, they have breathing coaches, they have all this other stuff,
and all needed for now, and all needed because it is a sport.
But at the end of the day, those people, a lot of those people are interns or residents. They're just starting out. They're being paid a stipend to fly in, and they're covering their own cost to fly in, fly out. I will continue to argue that the breaker is transportation, housing, food.
Yeah,
it's just
before we move on. That picture of the Blue Devils there, by the way, just a little bit of shout out. That trumpet player right in the front. There's a chap called Alex Tucker, who I marched with at Kids Grove Scouts. And he's a British lad, and I do recall the very first time he ever stepped in the line at Kids Grove Scouts. I think he was 12, and had been playing a trumpet for about 5 minutes. Look at him now; he's aging out of BD next year.
Wow, that's awesome!
Love it.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, well, that's all we have for that part of the podcast. So there's gonna be a lot of editing for me. I can already tell.
There is.
I'm
sorry.
It's just 4 hours. It's 4 hours of my life. But anyway, it's important because we get to give it to you.
And this is a 200th episode as well. So it's kind of a
200th episode extravaganza. Okay, so one of the requests Kanan was telling me is that somebody put in the comments they wanted to know a little bit more about us, where we kind of our history, where we come from, all that fun stuff. So I don't know who wants to lead off of that. My story.
I'll go. I'll go. So my background, I first saw drum corps back in 1985. I went to a little. I'm originally from Northern California, in Sonoma County. I went to a little tiny high school that had a high school marching band of about 35 kids. But our band director was an alumnus of the Santa Clara Vanguard. And she basically turned me and a couple of the other people in the band on to the idea of drum corps. Went to freelancers in 86, but obviously the freelancers folded. And then we went back in 87. And I remember my band director driving us herself to the freelancers rehearsal. It was at Valley High School, was the first rehearsal I went to in South Sac. I remember getting there and my sum total of experience with drum corps was I'd seen some videotapes of it. That was it. I thought the Skyriders were cool as hell. And anyway, so I walk into this gym at Valley High School, and I'm just like a deer in headlights. I was about 95 pounds soaking wet. I wasn't a very good player, but I knew I really wanted to do this drum corps thing. And I remember, I was scared shitless. And I'm just stood there in this gym, right? and I could see the drum line off in the corner, just jamming. And I'm going to name drop someone here because we sadly lost him a few years ago. But this guy comes over, a guy called Jason McEnroth. And I don't know if did you march with Jason?
I don't think I did.
I don't think so. No, I don't think
so. No, he aged out in '88. Anyway, this guy come over and man, he had this long hair and big muscles, right? And he was just a rock star, this guy. Little did you know this guy would end up going on literally to be a rock star. He went on to march with, or went on to be a member of the Blue Man Group, as well as the drummer for Henry Rollins. But yeah, he comes over, he says, "Hey, who are you?" And I went by CJ at the time. So I said, "I'm CJ." And he goes, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I don't know." I said, "I think I play the horn." And he brought me over to one of the instructors, a guy called Mike Grogan, who said, "Right, jump in the line." And they gave me this thing called a euphonium. I'd never even heard of a euphonium before. I know it was huge, and I was like 95 pounds. And yeah, so I ended up marching in the Freelancers in '87. We had an absolute ton of holes in the Corps that year. We actually stepped off first tour with over 30 holes in the horn line, and literally were picking up members as we went. And I struggled really, really bad that year, to the point where by the time we got to second tour and we got to Casper, Wyoming, I'd actually quit. The drum corps. I walked off the field, went into the gym. I was packing up my stuff, and that same Mike Grogan and Roger DeLoza, who we sadly lost a few years ago as well, came over to me, put their arms around me, says, what are you doing? I says, "I'm quitting." And Justin, you'll laugh about this. Roger just goes, "You're not quitting. What do you think?" In that Roger way. This is a little bit of an inside track, but sorry everybody. But yeah, I ended up finishing out the season. Went back then and I marched there until 1992. I flirted with the Blue Devils in 1992, but ultimately came back to the Freelancers for my age out. I aged out of the activity, went and joined the Air Force after that. Sort of flitted in and out of playing in the activity a little bit, some writing, some instructing, stuff like that, as and when I could. And then got out of the Air Force in 99. Yeah, 99. I'd met my wife at this point. She wasn't my wife at this point. So we were pioneers of long distance dating. And the plan always was that she was going to move to America. So my wife is British. This is answering the second question of how did I end up in the UK? So the plan always was that she was going to be coming to the States to live. And then 9/11 happened. And I had a life epiphany moment, if you will. And just said, life's too short. I didn't have anything really holding me down in America. And I packed 2 bags and got on a plane. And I've been here for 23 years now. We've raised 2 beautiful girls, both grown and out of the house now. I got back into the marching activity in around 2005. We were living in a town called Warrington. And I went out into the backyard one day and I heard the sound in the distance that could only be that of a drum corps rehearsing. And little did I know that Warrington, the town that I lived in, was the epicenter of the drum corps activity for many, many years in the UK. So Warrington is a town of, call it back then you were talking about probably about 100,000 people. So what's that, about the size of Stockton, maybe something like that?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. Stockton's bigger than that. No, Stockton's bigger than that.
Yeah, okay, well 100,000. Yeah, not a big town, if you will. At one point in the 80s, Warrington had like 5 drum corps. and it's hard in this town to find somebody who at least our age who doesn't know what drum corps is. Oh yeah, I remember the bands back in the 80s, blah, 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 you know. So anyway, yeah, so there was a drum corps rehearsing, and I just walked over and I was just watching them, enjoying what I was seeing. And Glenn, the corps director, that particular corps was called the Cheshire Cadets. Glenn, the corps director, came up to me and just introduced himself to me. He says, and I'd mentioned, mentioned my background. He goes, "Oh, if you'd like to help out, we're always happy for some help." By helping out, what he actually meant was come play tuba. That was never my intention, but that's what I ended up doing. So yes, I worked with Kids Grove for a couple of years, and then kind of stayed out of the activity for a few years. And then 2016, same thing happened. I heard the sounds that could only be the sounds of, 2015, the sounds that could only be that of a drum corps rehearsing, and it turned out it was the Kids Grove Scouts rehearsing in Warrington. And I went over there, so I was involved somewhat in the activity. I played in a sit-down brass ensemble, played on drum corps instruments called high brass, and they were all drum corps veterans and stuff like that. Anyway, so 2015, I toddled my way over and watched the Kids Grove Scouts rehearse. I've got my wife with me, and I just looked at my wife, and she just said, "You're going to march, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
So I marched with Kids Grove from 2016 to 2019. And I won my only championships with the Kids Grove Scouts. So
Yay!
Got them here somewhere.
Something we haven't done.
Yeah. So 2016 and 2018, I won the DC UK championship. And 2019, the DC UK and the Drum Corps Europe Championship as well. So when I was in freelancers, I played euphonium and baritone. I was a soloist my age out year. We'll watch the video in a bit, and you won't see me because I didn't get any video time. And so when I get to Kids Grove, I played tuba. So some good times, and now my marching shoes are firmly retired, and this is what I do.
You're a host on this amazing show.
Yes.
And on this channel.
I just love the activity. So
yeah. All right, Jen, you want to go? Because you
okay,
once again, you have a much more interesting story than I do, probably.
All right, so I have two older brothers. So my introduction to drum corps was because they were marching at the Freelancers. Again, I think we're all Californians. I grew up just outside of Sacramento, California in the 80s. We moved to St. Louis in 1985. Or 80, I think it was 84. It's all a blur now. So my brothers marched 84 together. And then my younger brother marched 85. My older brother did not. He was on a church mission. So let's see, Ed, he did 84 Freelancers, 86 27, 87 Madison, aged out with Madison. And then my brother Scott only did 84, 85 Freelancers. So my first experience with drum corps was live drum corps. 84 is a very formative year. That was my first trip to championships. My family went to DCI finals week in 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89. and 90 was the first year I missed. And I mean, it's just like that was how my summers were spent. In fact, when we moved to St. Louis from California, we were in a motorhome and we followed the freelancers on that tour that went out through Nevada, Ogden, Wyoming. We just followed the drum corps. So it was a lot of fun. So like my childhood is drum corps. Then I did marching band as I would, and color guard as I would. I mean, I was that kid out in the yard trying to spin a flag. I was just that kid. So it was just a matter of time before I was able to get to drum corps. My parents were very much like, you're not doing this in high school. You can graduate high school and be an adult in drum corps. So I auditioned. I mean, like so many that ended up at Phantom Regiment in the 90s, 1989 was like, that's the corps I'm going to. So it was there was just not a doubt that I was going to audition there. And plus it was only like a 5-hour drive from St. Louis. So it's pretty close by Midwest standards. I went up to the audition camp. I got cut right after the audition camp. So that was a fun experience. Yeah, it was also bittersweet. And then I kind of floundered. A friend of mine convinced me to go to STAR. She was going through the STAR process, and I was raised as not a STAR fan, so it was kind of like, okay, I'll do it. It's only a 4-hour drive. I got a friend there. So I was at STAR all through the winter, and then I was the last color guard person to get cut from STAR about a couple weeks after their April camp. So I was like, wow, what do I do? We're there. This has been my life goal forever. What am I going to do? So I started looking around, and it was like Blue Knights, Suncoast Sound, freelancers. And freelancers said, we've got a camp next week, come out. So I went to the April camp. It was like a late April camp. Went to the April camp. They said, you're great. Please come back, move in. Here's all the stuff. And so I spent my summer at the freelancers. Inadvertently, by accident, it became a situation where all 3 Carr siblings had marched the freelancers. And so we all have our drum corps jackets from the freelancers. We all have that shared experience. And it's something that I'm extremely proud of. That we can all say that we participated in the same drum corps. So then...
And you were one of the cool guard chicks as well. You'd actually talk to the horn guys as well.
I did. I liked the horn guys. They were nice.
I was just thinking, if you would have made STAR in 92, you probably would have marched 93.
I probably would have marched. I don't know. I think I might have gone back to regiment. I just
really.
Don't know.
Wow.
I think I would have. I know. Yeah, because I hated that 92 show. I was actually like,
STAR's
I
92 show?
Yeah, I
STAR's
hated
92
it.
show.
I was like,
one of
I
my
will do
favorites.
this if I have to. But I hated it. I'm just,
I almost marched there in 91, actually.
It's kind of interesting that I can still see a couple of my drill spots in that opener. So I went back to regiment. I marched 3 years at regiment. Fully different experience. The first camp I went to at Regiment 93, they offered me a contract. So totally opposite as the year before. I aged out the year before their first championship, so that was a tough pill to swallow, but that's life. And then I probably I taught, I did all that stuff until 2000, but I kind of got out of drum corps around 98. Took a much needed break it's kind of one of those things where it was like I just wasn't enjoying myself. I was getting paid like 75 cents an hour for all the hours I was putting in teaching, and it just became a thing where I was like I needed to focus on myself and get out of school and all this stuff, and so I kind of walked away from the entire activity around 2000 2001. And of course, Facebook came along in '08 and everybody's, I am Spartacus and all this stuff. And so it was nice reconnecting, but I didn't get back into drum corps until maybe 2011 as a fan going to a show. And then in 2016, we were doing just kind of the homecoming show, big alumni corps for the 60th anniversary. And I somehow got finagled into writing some of that work because they had lost their choreographer. And we were just kind of like, oh my gosh, the Guard doesn't have any work. I couldn't even believe I was participating in it because I just had shoulder surgery and like I couldn't even move my arm, So all the work I wrote was left-handed work so that I could do it, But that kind of the whole thing just kind of reignited, this love affair with drum corps. And in 2018, I approached the Corps about maybe doing some grant writing. So in 2018, I joined the development and fundraising committee. And then in 2019, I joined the board at Phantom Regiment, and I've been there since. And what a fun few years that's been. I don't think it was until 2022 that I officially stopped breathing into my paper bag of stress. But we got through a pandemic. We relaunched the drum corps. We've had some successful years, and I'm really proud of the work that the organization has done. Currently, I am on the steering committee for the 2026 Alumni Corps. That's going to be a huge thing. We're performing semifinals night and everything, and that's been a lot of really fun work seeing everybody come back and get excited about performing again. And I'm excited about performing again. Not that I want to do an all-age corps. I'm just excited about this one opportunity. I'm just going to be in the back with my flag doing some slams and some carves and a couple of tosses, and I'm happy. But it's fun. I'm really excited to be in this side of drum corps. Not the instruction, not the design. I'm really excited to be in the planning. My focus is member experience and wellness and all the policies that make the drum corps safe and wonderful. So yeah, that's me.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Okay, you guys ready for my boring story? Okay.
Yeah.
It's not boring, but okay. So I was in. So everything in my life kind of happened as flukes. So when I was 10 years old in 5th grade, for some reason I got signed up for band. Don't know why. I still don't even know why. Somehow I got signed up for band. I didn't sign up myself, so I don't know if my mom did or they just said, well, you're going to take band. So I was the last one to get an instrument, and guess what instrument I got? The trombone. The longest damn instrument. And I was literally about 4 feet 10 inches at the time, so I was like short, and I could not reach 6th and 7th position. So Kanan, you understand, I actually had to get a paper clip and create this paper clip concoction where it went around the slide, and so I'd go on my pinky so I could get out to 6th and 7th position like this.
I sucked. Should have trademarked that thing, man, because I used the exact same thing. mine was a wire coat hanger.
Oh, there you go. But I mean, I was short. I played for like a little bit. I was okay. I was also in choir, which was interesting. But actually, I could sing pretty well, with some instruction. But so I really liked music, but I was kind of like flaky, and I moved around a lot from the time I was born until I was about 24. I moved a lot, like everywhere, all over the place. But anyway, so I got into trombone, and I kind of stopped for a while. And it wasn't until I was a freshman in high school. I was in my Spanish class, which I flunked, by the way. So I was in my Spanish class. No bueno. I was sitting next to this guy with long hair, and he goes, and somehow we started talking, and he said, and I asked him, like, well, he was like, do you play music or anything like that? And I go, no, I used to play trombone a long time ago. He goes, oh, I'm the bass player in the jazz band here. That we need trombone players. And I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, well, I'll talk to the band director, and then you can, and whatever. So he talked to the band director, and I showed up, and I literally, the band director just gave me a trombone, and I was horrible. I was a wreck as a child. I mean, I was just socially awkward and weird. I still am, but, and I just started playing, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And then for some reason, I ended up going on their trip that year, which was to Washington, D.C. and all this stuff. And I had to march in this field show, which I had no clue what I was doing. I was literally just being told, go here, go there.
Was that Miraloma? Yeah. Was that Miraloma, was it?
No, it's in Manteca. It's called East Union High School.
East Union, that's right.
East Union. And back then, the band was really big. I mean, they were about like 160 or something like that. Which for a town that size, because there was like 30,000 people in that town, was huge. That's a huge band. But what's funny is every year I was in the band dropped 40 people at least. So as soon as everybody graduated, we really didn't get a lot of people. So the next year we were like 120, then we're 110, and then 80. And then my last year, I think we were like 67 or 70 or something like that. So we're really small, but anyway.
Wow.
But in that band, we had a lot of people that were marching corps. We had people marching Valley Fever, Blue Devils. At the rival high school at Manteca High School, there was people that marched Santa Clara. So their tenor, because I remember going over there for some weird reason, and this guy was playing the tenors, and he had marched 87 and 88 or something like that. So he was just like playing the crap out of the tenor drum. And anyway, so several of my friends, like I said, marched Blue Devils. They marched Valley Fever, but my friend Mario, all of a sudden, he disappeared for the summer. Because I was pretty stupid and naive back then. I really didn't know. So my friend Mario disappeared, and my friend Larry disappeared. So all of a sudden, yeah, they disappeared. And then all of a sudden, everybody goes, hey, we're going to go to this drum corps show. And this was 1988 summer. And then they tried to organize it, but for some reason I didn't end up making it there. So I could have seen Drum Corps in '88 live, which I didn't get to see. So my friend comes back and he shows up to band camp late because they tour ended late, and he's like, "Dude, you gotta come march, dude, because it was the most amazing thing ever. You gotta come march. You gotta come march." And I'm like, "March what?" I don't even know what the hell you're talking about. So I'd never even heard about Drum Corps, nothing. Other than, the people that I knew had marched these groups, but I didn't know what it was. I'd never seen Drum Corps. So so we get to November of '88. He goes, "Dude, okay, there's a rehearsal in December. You need to come to it. All you need to do is bring your mouthpiece, and they'll give you a horn and all that stuff." I'm like, okay, because at that point I really started enjoying marching. I was really into the marching band. We were doing pretty good. Our band was pretty decent that year. So I'm like, okay, I think I can handle that. So I remember going to his house, and he goes like, and he had the '88 video, the VHS, right, of Drum Corps, and he puts it in. He goes, okay, you got to watch this shit, and he puts it in there, and it's the Madison Scouts. And I just saw that, and I was just like this. I was like, "Oh my god!" How am I going to do that?
Well, you're going to go to freelancer, so you're not really going to do that.
Then he put in Blue Devils, and I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Again, you're going to freelancers, so
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, so I said, okay. And then I remember vividly going to that rehearsal the next day because I stayed over at his house. It was a Sunday rehearsal, so they did Sunday rehearsals back then.
Yeah.
And
it was the day you and I met.
Was that
you and I met?
Really?
Yeah, they lined you up right next to me.
Oh, that's right. Because I was B10, you were B9.
Sweet.
Yeah.
How do you guys
And
remember
also-
that stuff? That's crazy.
And also, so you guys have heard us talk about our nicknames. You know, I'm the tumor, and Justin is Stress Master. So I was the tumor because I marched spot B9. So B9 tumor.
Right.
Yeah.
Justin, where'd Stress Master come from?
Somebody gave it to me because I'm stressed out all the time, man.
It was actually. I wasn't going to say it was actually me. So Justin used to not deal with stress quite as well as he does now. He used to turn different colors, like look at that face right there. He's over on this side for me, but that face would pretty much go purple. It would pretty much go purple.
I'd get so pissed off. But a lot of it was because I was socially awkward, and I didn't know what
we
I
all
had in
were.
situations.
We all.
Yeah, but
How
I mean,
were you socially awkward with that amazing hair that you had?
I don't know.
You did have amazing hair. Hey, to be fair though, Jen, I had pretty amazing hair back then as well. Though I had a full-on mullet and everything. So
You both did.
I didn't have a mullet.
You had
Now.
your flock of seagulls thing going on.
Yeah, I did the flock of seagulls thing going on.
Oh yeah, you're
totally
full-on
did.
flock of seagulls.
I totally did. That's one thing I got to say. I have really great hair. I have really great genetics in terms of hair. But so anyway, so I marched. So I got cut twice in '89. I got cut twice, but I kept going back. So I'd show up.
Bad smell.
I was a bad smell. But people kept dropping in the baritone line. There was a couple of people that were there and then they dropped, and then so I got a spot, and I had a really not so good year. I had a lot of weird shit happen that year. But I continued, and I marched 90, and then after 90, I almost quit. I was going to quit the Corps. I was done. I'd had enough. I was actually going to go march somewhere else. I was actually toying with marching, like I said, Star of Indiana, or Madison, or somewhere else, because I was just like, I was done. I was just done.
Yeah.
But
after 94, I considered jumping ship to cadets for 95.
Oh wow!
But then decided to stay with regiment. Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, back in those days, the freelancers was a tough place to march because it wasn't that we were a bad drum corps. I mean, we were a DCI finalist drum corps more often than we weren't, but it was one of those every year you were starting over. Every single year you were starting over because we would lose all of our best players to down the road to Santa Clara or Concord. You know,
that's a conversation,
and it
we're
was
still
frustrating.
having in general. You know, yeah,
it was, and I don't want to derail too much, but yeah, let's. But yeah, it so I mean, honestly, I mean, I gained a lot from marching there. I mean, I was playing. We were in the baritone line. We had some of the best players ever, like for baritone. I mean, and soprano and everywhere else too. But I mean, like John Rashawn and Steve Sprague. Those guys were massive players. They had marched since '84, '85. John Rashawn actually marched cadets, I think, 86.
Yeah.
And then he came back with the freelancers. I'm like, why would you do that? But anyway, probably a cost thing. But we had a lot of people that went and, marched other places in 86, and stuff like that. But I mean, so if you guys are watching, which I'm sure you are, you guys were amazing players. And it was great because I actually learned a lot how to play, like really how to play. And Chris Knowles, if you're watching, sir, when he came in 1990, that's when the Corps, my playing completely evolved into something completely different.
See, I still say that the freelancer's secret weapon was Richie Hodge.
No, from a technical standpoint, yes, but what Chris Knowles brought was having us play as a powerhouse instead of just playing. Instead of just playing the music, we were able to perform the music like. He got us to play loud, and he got us to play in tune, and got us to play all this stuff.
I think the thing. So yeah, we're going down memory lane here a bit, folks. But we had you look back at freelancers. I mean, we had some amazing top notch instructors work with us. We've had the freelancers. We had Chris Knowles, who went on to found the Renegades, was with the Blue Devils for a bunch of years. We had Rick South work with us.
Yeah.
Ralph Hardiman's worked with the Freelancers. Pete Emmons has worked with the Freelancers. You know, obviously the Zimneys have worked with the Freelancers. The Silvas have worked with the Freelancers. So we had some amazing people. Like I said, it wasn't the easiest place to march, though, because like I said, every year you were starting over, you know, and it could at times be a pretty stressful place to march, you know, but the common denominator, though, is it's the place that actually brought the three of us together.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yep. Justin, when did you age out? 93?
I aged out in 93. That was an interesting year.
To say the
I
least.
hate that year.
It was just, I mean, we when I showed up for the first
hate
You
camp,
guys
that
lost
so
a lot
much.
of people after 92.
We lost a lot of people
jumped
after
ship in
91, actually. We lost about half the horn line after 91.
yeah,
And then
But-
lost
but-
the other half after 92.
yeah. But if what I was gonna say, so yeah, I aged out in 93, and I actually started. So kind of a little bit more about my actual professional life or whatever. I actually spent, gosh, 6 years just teaching. That's all I really did is I went to school and I taught. So I started writing my first drum corps. I started writing my first show when I was just graduated high school after 1990 season. So I've written like marching band, winter guard, winter drum line, lots and lots of shows. Spent a lot of years as a designer, consultant. I actually worked for a band in Anaheim. From 2000 to 2004 as the assistant director there. That was an amazing band. Holy crap. Loera High School from Anaheim. Really good band director. I learned a lot there, just like how to kind of like conduct myself a little more professionally, because up until then I really hadn't had that exposure. But I was kind of like a nomad in the 90s, and so I kind of started settling down in the 2000s a little bit.
Did you work with VK Part 2?
No, I did not. That was Clint.
Yeah, I knew Clint. I knew there was a few ex-freelancers that were involved with that. So,
yeah, I did not. I actually had an opportunity to work with the Troopers, though, in 2000. A friend of mine was the caption head, but I just couldn't get it to work. I really wish I should have just done it, because I at least would have had some drum corps experience. And that you know, back in the 2000s, things were evolving and changing, so that would have been kind of cool to do. But anyway, so pretty much just taught a lot. Actually, just retired technically from writing in 2022. That was my 2021 was my last season, I think. So basically, after the pandemic, we had one year. Maybe it was 22. I think 22 is my last year. But anyway, so I've written lots and lots of shows. And then I started this channel 2021. Was it 21 or 22? I can't remember. I had a previous channel that got copyrighted out of existence. So that was a good time. I learned a lot from that experience.
and that kids is why you don't see Bands of America on this podcast.
Yeah,
or this channel.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because don't do Bands of America.
We'd love to talk about it, but we can't.
Yeah, we can't talk about it. We can talk about it all we want. Yeah. But anyway, so, I mean, that's kind of like my life. You know, now I have a job, you know, like everybody else, but I do kind of miss teaching every now and again. I miss the creative aspect of the, like, creating the show and stuff like that, and see it come to life off of the page, so to speak. But this is kind of, you know, that's why I started the channel, because I wanted to do something creatively that was different. So I'm glad I did, because I kind of stepped into a world that, you know, I mean, we don't make we don't make hardly any money for doing this, really. It's just more for the love of doing it.
This is funsies.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to catch up with you guys.
Well, what
okay.
do you mean we don't make any money from this?
Yeah. I don't know what money you're getting.
I was wondering why my bank my bank balance hasn't changed.
Well, you know,
I know,
there's
right?
that. But I mean, you know,
I do this
we'll talk
because
about,
nobody else wants to talk drum corps with me.
Exactly. But I mean, I think it's been great. I mean, we've had some amazing people on here. We're going to have some more amazing people come on.
Hopefully, yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, hopefully. We're working on that.
We should
wrap up.
It's been
So thank
2
you guys so
hours.
much for joining us. This is going to be a pretty long episode, so we
Yeah.
have a lot of editing to do. But thank you guys so much for joining us. This is our 200th episode. We've had a ball making these videos. We have more. I actually have 3 videos that are going to be coming out pretty soon. I'm going to start scheduling those to come out. But thank you so much for joining us. Please make sure you visit our YouTube page so that you can get all the information on this wonderful channel that hopefully you subscribe to already.
Buy
And then
some
that way,
stuff.
buy some stuff, become a member. That way you get preview access to all the videos before anybody else does. So we actually set it up that way so you can see the videos before anybody else. We also have a community page. We also have our store where you can buy some stuff. We have a lot of cool logos and stuff like that on there. I'm going to try to be working on some Christmas stuff. I just don't know if I'm going to have time, unfortunately. But please visit the store. Please support our channel. We want to get to, look at that. We want to get to DCI finals in 2026. I kind of want to try to go. I might go this summer anyway. Because my family lives in Ohio, so
it's in my contract that he has to fly me over business class, so it's going to be a little bit expensive. So
yeah, business class. Yeah,
Business class.
If you consider business class, economy, like economy basic, that's going to be where you're going to be on economy basic. But anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you on the next video. You're going to see another video coming up very soon. I already have one done, ready to go. It's just going to get uploaded and then set out. But thank you guys so much. We'll see you on the next video. Until then.
For sure.
No matter who you're doing it with, no matter where you're doing it, no matter how you're doing it, or no matter when you're doing it, just make sure that, in fact, when you're doing it, march on.
March on.
March
See you on the
on.
next one.